Hello, fellow Inklings. Welcome once again to the Eagle and Child. In this week's post, we're stepping into another question that quietly shapes a lot of Christian fear, even if it's rarely talked about. And that question is death the final chance to avoid hell? Now, growing up, I absorbed the idea that the moment you die, your eternal fate is sealed forever. There's no appeal. At the moment of death, heaven or hell is locked in for eternity. It was assumed to be obvious, certainly biblical, and unquestionable. I mean, after all, Billy Graham asked the question himself. If you died tonight, do you know where you would go? And I personally remember responding to that. But it was more out of fear than out of love for God. I certainly figured that Billy Graham knew what he was talking about. But when I actually went looking for the idea in Scripture as an adult while going through my own deconstruction, something really surprising happened. It just isn't there. Christians often point to a single verse, that's Hebrews 9:27, which says that people die once and then they face judgment. But the verse says nothing about judgment being irreversible. It says nothing about grace ending at death. In the time frame of the Bible, like Genesis, where the world was created in 6 days, then could represent 1,000,000 years. Then doesn't necessarily mean immediately. I've also heard people point to Jesus' words to the thief on the cross as proof that death is the final dividing line. In the Bible, some translations, it says, Jesus tells one of the thieves, "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." For many, this settles the question. You'll die today, the day you'll be with me in paradise. But even here, the passage is far less clear than we're often told. So the phrase can be read either as, "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise," or "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." You see, scholars continue to debate the grammar because in the original Greek manuscripts, there was no punctuation at all. So that could be either way. But more importantly, the broader witness of Scripture complicates that whole interpretation. The New Testament repeatedly teaches that after his death, Jesus descended to the realm of the dead, to Hades, before the resurrection. In that light, Jesus himself did not go to paradise that day himself. So he surely didn't meet the thief there that day. So for a brief, this belief that determines the eternal fate of billions of people, I mean, come on, we'd expect the Bible to be unmistakably clear. You'd expect Jesus to warn us directly, and not through a parable like Lazarus, where the story says he was in Hades, which we're going to discuss in the next post, was in Jewish culture merely a place to wait on God's next move. It was not an eternal destination. So none of the authors of the Bible clearly warn us of the death deadline. Instead, we find hints that the story might be larger than we were taught. Peter speaks of Jesus preaching to spirits in prison. It raises a simple question. Why speak to them if their fate were already settled? And Paul insists that nothing, not even death, can separate us from the love of God, not even death. And in Philippians, Paul imagines a future where every knee bows and every tongue confesses Jesus is Lord. Even Jesus tells stories that challenge the idea of it being too late. The lost sheep is found. The prodigal is embraced before he finishes even his confession. The workers hired at the last hour receive the same generosity as the rest. And do you remember back in the day the bracelet that had WWJD on it? What would Jesus do? If we're followers of Jesus, that's a great question. You'll find in my reconstruction journey, I always wanted to focus on the life and love demonstrated by Jesus himself. C.S. Lewis, my favorite Protestant scholar, noticed also this tension about death being the last chance. In his book, The Great Divorce, he imagines souls after death still being invited to heaven. The door is open, grace is offered, free will rules, and no one is ever forced to take it, but it's always available to choose heaven. And from his letters, it is clear that C.S. Lewis believed in some form of continued healing or movement towards God beyond death, something like the idea of the Catholic concept of purgatory. This post is not about certainty. I will say this over and over again. No one, including myself, has a backstage pass to the afterlife. I do not know I'm right. Recovered Christianity is about asking whether we have been more confident in our conclusions about certain questions than can be found in Scripture. And do all those verses, or what we believe to be the narrative, does it resonate with our heart and soul and with our own experiences? If God's love truly has no end, you remember, not even death can separate us from God's love, then the gospel may be more hopeful and far less fear-driven than we were taught. If you've ever wondered whether death really is the last word, I invite you to take your own time and to carefully look for a clear answer in Scripture yourself. You're not losing your faith by asking these questions. In fact, you may be recovering it.